In the last lecture, we created our project with Create React App, and as I mentioned, make sure that npm start, this process, is running whenever you're working on your code. I now opened the folder which was created with Microsoft Visual Studio Code. This is the IDE I'm going to use throughout the course, but you can use any IDE or editor you want to use. For example, also WebStorm would be an alternative, or Sublime or Atom, or any other editor you like. Now here I installed a theme and some extensions, and you can find the exact configuration I'm using here described in a PDF document attached to this video, just in case you want to use the same, but feel free to use your favorite setup. Whatever the theme and setup you use, you will have the same amount of files and folders in your project. So let's now walk through all the files and folders we have here. On the root level, we get a couple of configuration files. These log files here can basically be ignored. They're just logging in the versions of the dependencies we're using. The general dependencies our project has are defined in the package.json file. And there you can see we have 3 dependencies in this project. And this was all created by Create React App. As you can see, we obviously import React. Here I'm using a release candidate version of React 16. At the point of time you're viewing this, this should be released. React DOM, it's the same. And React Scripts, as I mentioned, is a package offering all this build workflow, this development server, the next generation JavaScript feature support, and all these things we're using in this project. In the package.json file, there are also a couple of scripts defined. You can run these scripts with npm run and then the script name. The exception is start, which you can also run with npm start, the command we executed. And as you can see, it uses this React Scripts package to then also execute some start command there. That's simply a command this package makes available. And this command happens to start this development server, watch all our code, compile our code, optimize the code, and do all these things. Once you're ready for deploying your app, you would run npm run build to optimize it even more, not launch a development server, but instead get your optimized code stored in a folder. Because right now you won't see your compiled code anywhere here. Everything happens in memory. But I'll come back to deploying the application later in the course. So let's close this package.json file for now. The node modules folder holds all the dependencies and sub-dependencies of our project. This is why we have that many. We only had React, React DOM, and React Scripts, but React Scripts has a lot of other dependencies, all these little build tools which compile the code and so on. You shouldn't edit anything in the node modules folder. It's generated automatically if you run npm install in your project folder, and this was automatically done by Create React Scripts. The public folder is more interesting. It's basically the root folder which gets served by the web server in the end, though here it only holds the files we can edit. The script files are edited in the source folder. Here we got one important file, index.html. This is a normal HTML page, and it is the single page we have here. We will never add more HTML pages in this project. If you're creating a multi-page project, you would create multiple such projects here with Create React App. You wouldn't add more HTML files here, or you need your own workflow if you want to do that. So this is the single page where in the end our script files will get injected by that build workflow, which is why you don't see a script import here. And you can edit this file, but we won't write any HTML code here. I want to highlight this div here with the ID root. This will become important because this will be where we actually mount our React application later, and we will of course work in React. But if you need to add any imports to, let's say, other libraries, CSS libraries, or want to add some meta tags, you can do that here in the HTML file. You could also add more HTML here, but again, you probably want to do this in React. The manifest.json file is there because Create React App gives us a progressive web app out of the box, a very basic one at least, and gives us this manifest.json file where we can define some metadata about our application. Interesting for us is the source folder. Here we get a couple of files, and these are actually the files we will work in. This is actually our React application. Most important for us right now, the index.js file gets access to this root element in our DOM, in our HTML file, so the element with the ID root, which of course is this div we saw in the index.html file, this one. And there, as you can see, it renders our React application with the render method. Now here it references some app object or element, which we import from an app file. The extension .js is left out because it's automatically added by our build workflow. And if we have a look at this app.js file, therefore, this is where we see our first and only React component we have in this starting project right now. Here we see some JSX, and I will dive deeply into what we see here exactly in the next lectures. For now, let's remove all the content in this wrapping div, and let's simply add a h1 tag here, where I'll say, hi, I'm a React app. Let's close it, of course, also. And then let's save it. That's always important. Don't forget to save your files. Now, since you have npm start running, this will automatically trigger a recompilation, and it should automatically reload your page too, which is why you should now see, hi, I'm a React app, instead of the old content. With that, we can also remove this logo.svg file because we no longer use it in our project. And now we got a bit of a leaner source folder. Now, what else did Create React App create for us? It gave us this app.css file, which basically defines some stylings we use in this app.js file. Though I will say that these are not scoped to this file. These are still global stylings. And I will actually remove everything but this first app class definition in that file and save it thereafter. We also get an index.css file, which also applies styles globally and which should be used for some general setup, as here for the body of our application. The register service worker JS file is, as the name implies, important for registering a service worker, which is generated automatically. That's related to this progressive web app we get out of the box. It will basically pre-cache our script files. We don't need to configure anything there. And the test file, well, we'll dive into testing later in the course. It basically allows us to create unit tests for the different units, for example, components in our application. This is the general setup, and for the majority of this course, we'll work in app.js or other new components we create. Speaking of that, let's analyze this file. Let's understand the syntax we see there. Let's get rid of that logo import because we removed the logo file now that I see it. And let's dive into JSX, what exactly that is, and how we add more components to our application.